Greetings. How are you doing? I'm really glad to be here, glad to be able to share with you tonight who I am. My name is Derek Sloan. I was elected as a Conservative Member of Parliament 2 years ago. I ran for leadership of the Federal Conservative Party, and I was ejected from that party this year for being too vocal on what I believe is the most extreme times we've been in since probably the Second World War. We, unfortunately, live in a system where the big parties control everything that goes on. If you are not playing by the rules, you get penalized. And one thing that I saw in Ottawa, there are good MPs there, but the problem is that there is a lack of willingness to stand up and be counted. And we live right now in a time where we must stand. Now, we may not agree on everything, but our country right now is at a tipping point. And if we don't stand, if we're not counted, we're not good for anything at all. I have spoken with many MPs in Ottawa who frankly feel that things are going the wrong way, and they speak behind the scenes and they share many concerns. But in all honesty, if we're not willing to stand up and be counted, we're not good for much at all. I don't agree with the carbon tax. I don't agree with many of the liberty-destroying things that we have seen over the last 18 months. I will stand against them. I will fight against those things. These are things that Conservatives have fought for decades, and all of a sudden they're doing other things. I believe we need to stand up and be counted. We need a group of people who are willing to stand and are willing to do the right thing regardless of what it costs them personally. That's what I pledge to you today. I'm very glad to be here, and I'd be happy to answer any questions later. Thank you, and God bless Alberta. I was hoping I'd get to answer that last one because I was wanting to talk about transitioning away from Saudi oil and transitioning more into Alberta oil and transitioning away from Chinese products, but we'll talk about that another time. It is true that we've been talking about water for ages on reserves and other places, and we haven't done much about it. And I'm actually a big water guy. I love lakes. I love being in the outdoors. And one thing that really bugged me this year is with all the, and I don't want to pick on anybody, with all the Liberals talk about the climate and the carbon taxes and the Paris Agreement and all these things, they voted down a bill that was put forward by a Conservative that would have eliminated raw sewage dumping into our fresh waterways here in Canada. About 900 billion liters of raw sewage is dumped into our waterways every 5 years, or in the last 5 years anyways. And I am very discouraged by that. Now, this is a related issue of our disrespect of our water systems. So what I believe generally when you're dealing with the environment is let's do things, but let's do things that actually make our water cleaner, actually make our air cleaner, not just focusing on one particular substance. With respect to boil water advisories on reserves, this is a major issue that has to be solved. And everyone will come up here and pound the table and say that it has to be solved. But it's a fact that the bureaucracy is broken. Indigenous affairs, it's broken. They're spending billions and billions and billions. We're not seeing anything come out of it. We need to make sure that we take these issues head on and solve them once and for all. And of course, it is easier said than done, and there has been work put forward on this. But we live in a first world country, and the fact that so many of our citizens here are under boil water advisories is a shame. And it's also a shame that they're dumping raw sewage into our fresh waterways all around the country. This is something that is a real environmental issue that ought to be tackled instead of the carbon tax, the Paris Agreement, and never-ending taxes that advantage China over Canada. Thank you so much. We've always had a mental health crisis in this country, and COVID made it much, much worse. And to top it all off, in the middle of COVID-19, the Liberals passed a bill called Bill C-7, which expanded access to euthanasia. It went to the Senate, and it came back from the Senate, allowing within 2 years of that date access to people who are mentally ill to access euthanasia, those who are not dying or reasonably foreseeable, or the reasonable foreseeability of death is close. This is a problem, friends, because how can we have suicide prevention on one hand, but then the ultimate option on the other? And I think about, in Alberta here, Colonel Dave Redmond, who actually authored the original disaster response plan of this province that was in force up until COVID, at which point it was jettisoned. And they've done things that they've never done before, such as quarantining the healthy and sick alike irrespective of your health condition, shutting down businesses for months on end. As bad as it was here, it was worse in other areas of the country. We're seeing mental illness, anxiety, eating disorders, all of these things, overdoses, suicides skyrocket. And this is something that needs to be addressed. For one, we can't be locking everybody down again. Now, even if we don't do that, we still have a mental health crisis on our hands. It must be addressed. I have a good friend of mine, Theorin Fleury, talks about the many people who have gone through abuse and trauma in Canada. We have to, that's not the only cause of mental illness, of course, but we have to help people where they're at. We need to deal with people who are dealing with addictions and all of these things, and we have to do it as a community. We can't do it when we're apart, when we're at home. This is where, when we're locked down for months on end, this is where these problems fester. Targeted measures are fine. We cannot shut down the economy and our society again. Thank you so much. I am a living, breathing, independent member of Parliament right now, and there's not many of us around. And in fact, we're rare in history of this country. And I can tell you, having been one, I was able to accomplish way more in my time as an independent than my time as a Conservative. I did 2 separate press conferences in Parliament Hill that CPAC must broadcast that became the most watched political videos of all time on CPAC. One is the most watched video on CPAC of all time, and it became so within 2 days. You can watch that on my website. It's still on the CPAC website as well, but YouTube pulled it down after 3 weeks. They didn't like that it was getting more airtime than Justin Trudeau's press conferences. But in all seriousness, I would say that Aidan is correct. All parties whipped the vast majority of their votes, even the new Democratic Party, the Liberal Party. It really is a shame. It's they talk about democracy on the outside, but they don't practice that on the inside. And even the Conservative Party, which is actually better than the others in the sense that they give free votes on moral issues, the vast majority of those votes are whipped as well. And in the Constitution of the Conservative Party, it says there, as a principle, votes should be free, and yet they're not. So this is a problem with all parties. The Green Party, to their credit, does allow free votes, and that's a good thing. But I will tell you, as an independent, I got more speaking time in the House of Commons. I asked any question I wanted that I felt was valid. I didn't have to run it by anybody at any time, and I was able to do many initiatives that I was the only person to vote against things like Quebec unilaterally altering their constitution and many other things because I didn't have anybody telling me what to do. It would actually be best if everyone acted this way across the country. We wouldn't be in the mess that we're in today. But unfortunately, the major parties control everything. So being an independent absolutely gives you more latitude to do anything than anybody else can. And at the end of the day, whoever you elect here has 1 vote in the House of Commons. So you can have 1 vote in a loud voice, or you can have 1 vote voting the wrong way and a quiet voice. That's your choice. So good to talk to you tonight. Thank you so much. Thank you.